1965. Musically, rock is flourishing again thanks to the Beatle British influence. The first release by the group in 1965 was Bye Bye Baby. Guys, anything stand out about it?
No, other than the fact that there was one chord change in the whole thing when I wrote it that killed me, and that's probably what I liked about the whole thing, and that's probably why we recorded, because I forced the issue. But other than that, there was nothing specific there.
It was about this time that Nick Massey, who had been part of the group for nearly 10 years, decided that he wanted to give up the traveling and settle down. Did he leave in 1964, and didn't Joe Long join the group in 65?
I had been with a number of lounge groups. At that time, there were a lot of so-called music bars or show bars. And we had an act. It was a husband and wife and myself and a band backing us. And we did all the things of the day, all the Louis Prima, Keely Smith things, and the musical comedy. And I was working, in fact, in New Jersey when Nicky left the group. I happened to be, I spent a lot of time on the road, but coincidentally I happened to be home at that time. And I got a phone call from an old agent friend of mine, a guy who had been booking my act. And he asked me if I would be interested in joining the main group. Naturally, I thought he was kidding. But he said, yeah, I've got an audition all squared away for you. He said, just be down at a music store in New Jersey, in Belleville, New Jersey. Be there in an hour, and Tommy DeVito wants to hear you. And really, to be quite honest, I wasn't really into pop music. I said something when you asked about my musical influence, and I mentioned Brubeck and those guys. Well, I was really into jazz more than I was into rock music.
Actually, it was a bad choice that worked out well.
So I remember the first time I met Bob, after I talked to Tom, he figured that I would make it with the group. I had the sound he was looking for. So he said, well, you have to meet the other guys. You have to meet Frankie and Bobby. So I went down, and Bob was there, very stern looking, and he said, are you familiar with the Four Seasons music? And I said, oh, sure, man, I know all your songs. Like, I know Don't Hang On. So he said, well, you're off to a good start. But anyway, they took a chance with me, and I joined them, as you said, back in '65. There was an interim there. When Nick left rather abruptly, and in order to fulfill contracts that the boys had at that time, they used their arranger, Charlie Colello. Charlie had been doing most of the Four Seasons instrumental arrangements.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so Charlie went with the group while I was getting myself together, getting out of my prior commitments and getting into their music. So Nicky, it's very possible that Nicky might have left in late '64, and Charlie might have filled in that gap.
Joe was born in 1941, and he mentioned earlier about playing the accordion, and he also sang baritone with his high school glee club. When an accident hurt his hand, he switched to string bass. Later, he formed his own group, the Rockettes, which broke up in 1961 when Uncle Sam called. He then formed a mixed lounge group called the Accents, which lasted about a year. He teamed up with Al and Jet Loring, as he mentioned, until called upon by the Seasons. What do you think kept the group basically together when other groups were breaking up?
A lot of arguments.
Had an act.
Screaming. Now, he just said something that I feel was just the opposite, though, really. I don't think the act really came together until Joe joined the group for a number of reasons, because he had a lot of experience and he handles the microphone, which we had not really been that experienced with. And the act was good, but it wasn't anywhere near what it is now or has been for the last 5 years.
Joe, I know you were single when you joined the group in 1965. Was your wife a fan of the group?
She was one of the group's biggest fans, and she was watching a TV show called Hullabaloo, and we were on it, and she said to her cousin, I love those guys, and her cousin happened to know a fellow who owned a club that we were going to be appearing at the following week. So her cousin said, well, fine, I'll make arrangements, we'll go down and see them. And she came down, and afterwards she came backstage to meet us, and I kind of dug her, and I told her to come back again. We're going to be back in Jersey in 2 months or so. she came back to see us again, and we started going out together, and that was it. So she was really a big Four Seasons fan.
She's not anymore, though.
No, now she hates the group.
In surveying teen and music publications over the last 10 years, there's very little publicity about the group. Is that the way you planned it?
Well, I would say we were probably the original underground group as far as publicity is concerned. I haven't the faintest idea why, other than the fact that we went through about 27 press agents. I really don't know. No reason comes to my mind.
Of course, if the publicity were right, I think that at this point the group would be in a far better position as far as people knowing and accepting the group as a household word, so to speak. You know, like when you think of Sinatra, I'm not meaning to imply, that we would be on a par equal to Sinatra.
Why not?
Sure, but the Seasons have had to work hard directly for whatever they've had in concert or on record, whereas it could have been a little easier if we had gotten more extensive publicity, and it would have been, I think, a little more long-lasting.
And at that time, when the Beatles, I think they sort of made groups personalities, but before that time, I mean, you could really pick out four guys in a group and say you knew each one's name, Once the Beatles hit the scene, then from that point on, any groups thereafter, I mean, everybody got into the guitar player and so on, it wasn't just the lead singer.
The next single by the group was a VJ release called Little Boy in Grown-Up Clothes.
Yeah, that was a takeoff on the Impressions, one of my favorite groups. We did it for an album. I don't really know why they pulled it for a single.
VJ continued to release singles for a time, mostly remakes of old rock tunes. Little Boy was the last single of note on that label. The first Phillips album release in 1965 was The Four Seasons Entertain You. The album contained some varied material, including a beautiful Bob Gaudio, Sandy Linzer composition called One Clown Cried. The next single released by the group was on Phillips in May, a record called Toy Soldier. Let's ask Frankie about it.
We were a little too soon. What happened with that particular record? If Toy Soldier would have come out in 70 or 69, it would have been a smash record for anybody who put it out. We were at that particular time into the war, but lightly. And later on, all the confusion came about where people started to write about war and so forth and so on, and had big success with it. Just a little early.
In July 1965, the next Phillips single by the group was out, Girl, Come Runnin'.
I think it was the top 40. I really don't remember what.
I remember I enjoyed the vocal work on that record. That was a nice vocal sound.
Yeah?
I thought so.
Thanks. I really don't remember anything about that.
The big single that year, 1965, was released in October called Let's Hang On.
Yeah, I can remember coming with the group when that record was out. And wherever we went in the country, and we were really traveling. In fact, I came with the group and immediately got on an airplane and flew out to California to do 2 weeks of TV. And it was incredible. I never could appreciate what it was like to be with a group riding the crest of a big hit. But Let's Hang On was a fantastic thing. Wherever we went, there was screaming and hollering. And as Bob said before, there was a unique individual identity that was going on with the group, I guess from 65 right through 68. And it was just an amazing thing to come on a group that was enjoying a #1 record. But it even goes further than that, John, because when I came with the group, actually the group had 3 records in the top 40, 2 records in the top 10, and Frankie, let's see, there was Hang On was #1, then Don't Think Twice by the name of the Wonder Who was on the charts, and then Frankie had You're Gonna Hurt Yourself as a single, as his own, single endeavor. So the group had 3 hits under 3 different names going at the same time, all on the charts at the same time.
Phillips, a bit later, released an album called Gold Vault of Hits that contained many of your hits, including Let's Hang On, Bye Bye Baby, Dawn, and Rag Doll, among others. One of the cuts included that was not a single hit for you was an interesting song called Betrayed, written by Sandy Linzer and Denny Randell. For 3 straight years then, the Four Seasons had made hit after hit with hardly a miss. They had to be honored musically for their efforts many ways, including a special day on ABC TV's Where the Action Is, hosted by Dick Clark. In late 1965, the Seasons did their only commercial for a chewing gum company to the tune of Let's Hang On. According to later press releases, the group tried an experiment to prove it was just not the magical name of the Four Seasons that had kept them on top for so long. They did it with a song called Don't Think Twice, It's All Right.
It was the wrong key. And we went in to do a straight version of it, and we realized that somewhere along the line things got fouled up and it was the wrong key. So Frankie said, well, maybe I could do it in the high voice, and you could just do a cute little thing on it. And he did it, and it came out great. And at that time, Joe said we had Let's Hang On out, and we realized that Don't Think Twice sounded like a winner, so we figured the only way we're going to get 2 records played at once is if we put it out under another name, and maybe they won't realize it's us, because it didn't really sound that much like us, And in fact, most jockeys thought it was, oh wow, I can't think of the name of the group now. They had Bread and Butter.
Oh, the New Beats. Yeah, right.
Because they were running contests all over the country about who the group was. And we put it out, and fortunately, it was a top 10 record for us. We were doing a Burt Bacharach, Hal David, and a Bob Dylan album, and that was supposed to be in, one of the cuts. Only we didn't do it straight, we just couldn't. It was the wrong key, so we had to fool around with it a little. Oh, it sold about 600,000-700,000. Well, it wasn't a consistent thing. I mean, we just didn't have a string of hits called The Wonder Who.
There were subsequent records, but they were just at our whim,
No, it was just, we had, it was a technical situation where we thought we had 2 hits at once and we couldn't put them both out under the same name.
Do you think that this time, late 1965, was the peak of your group's success?
If you want to go to the present day, I would say so, because the group changed complexion in many ways.
When was Ragdoll out? I forgot that.
64.
We went by that already.
Oh yeah, you
mentioned about the car.
You went to the bathroom during that.
Okay.
You're the guy that told the story, dummy, about the girl wiping the window. Remember?
Yeah, you gave her $5 and got a receipt.
Maybe it was all a lie. That's what it was.
She wondered if you had taken there.
I think between 65 and 68, the group really spread out in many different directions, both personal appearance-wise and production-wise. We finally branched into clubs, and now we're pretty firmly entrenched into clubs. And I think it was a result of something that happened in '66. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of you right now, but Under My Skin, I think, was a fine dividing point which separated the Four Seasons from being a teen-oriented concert group and turned the group into an adult group, So I would say that would have to be the height of the career of the group, as far as I'm concerned, because I think it tacked on a lot of longevity. If we didn't change during that period, I don't know whether the group would have been able to sustain as a team group. Especially now with the gray hair sprouting out here and there.
The final single released by Phillips in 1965, late in December, was "Workin' My Way Back to You." What do you remember about it?
It sounded a lot like "Let's Hang On." Don't hang on.
I just remember that the tempo was too slow.
Yeah.
That's about it.
The group was into that, let's see, how can we describe it? Almost like a Baroque rock, with the horns playing a lot of counter figures. There was Hang On, Opus 17, and Workin'. I got the wrong order. Hang On, Workin', and Opus 17. That all utilized the same kind of rhythmic thing, a strong 4/4 rhythm, with the horns, as I said before, a la Baroque. And it was just indicative of that particular era. The Seasons went through a kind of a very almost military sounding bag recording wise.
Working my way back to you, babe, with a burning love inside.
It wasn't long after that Phillips released an album of the same title that contained a song called "Showgirl." This brings us to the end of the third chapter in the golden era of the Four Seasons, and also to the halfway point. Up to this time, we've heard of the early days, the struggles, the joining together of members of two groups, the Four Lovers and the Royal Teens, how the Four Seasons name originated, the role of Bob Crewe in their success, and his decision to record a record called Sherry, the label changes to VJ, and in 1964 to Phillips. And in this hour, the Seasons talked about the mystery season and the new member, Joe Long. On the golden era of the Four Seasons.